The sky over Gulra wasn't the vibrant blue era remembered from her childhood. Instead, it hung like a faded curtain, a sickly, pale cyan tainted with the aftermath of war. Radiation-laced dust particles caught the planet's weak sunlight, creating an eerie glow on the horizon that locals had started calling Ghost Dawn. Not that there were many locals left to name anything. Era adjusted her breathing apparatus and squinted through her visor at the desolate landscape. Cracked earth stretched toward the horizon, interrupted only by the twisted skeletons of downed ships, remnants of the great Terranzuri conflict that had consumed this sector for nearly a decade. The war had officially ended 2 years ago, but peace treaties meant little on abandoned outposts like this one. Her long, pointed ears twitched inside her helmet, a Zari physiological response to environmental stressors that evolution hadn't quite eliminated. At 32 cycles old, Era had spent more than a third of her life in combat zones. The twitching was practically a constant companion now. One more diagnostics check, and we're done for the day, she muttered to herself, a habit she'd developed during her 18 months of solitude on Gulra. Her makeshift outpost stood on a small ridge, an ungainly collection of salvaged hull fragments, emergency shelters, and repurposed machinery. It wasn't pretty, but it kept the radiation at bay and recycled enough water and oxygen to keep her alive. Function over form, the soldier's mantra. Era knelt beside a small transmitter array she'd assembled from 5 different wrecks. The dust storms had damaged the power coupling again. With nimble fingers, she disconnected the scorch component. "Typical," she said, her voice carrying the particular brand of bone-dry sarcasm that had once made her popular among both Zari and Terran troops. "Just once, I like something to not break for an entire planetary rotation." She reached into her utility belt for a replacement part. The pouch was nearly empty. She'd need to scavenge again soon. The thought made her ears twitch more intensely, but she ignored the sensation. Survival wasn't negotiable, and sentiment about venturing into crash sites was a luxury she couldn't afford. Once, this region had been a strategic outpost of the Zuri-Terran Alliance, a symbol of cooperation between 2 species that had discovered each other just decades before. The Alliance had seemed unbreakable when they faced a common threat, the resource-hungry machine collective known as the Harvesters. But after victory, old suspicions crept back. Treaties frayed, diplomatic incidents multiplied, and eventually, the alliance imploded into open conflict. Era had been a communications specialist with the joint forces, then later a guerrilla fighter when the alliance dissolved. She'd survived when most others didn't, through a combination of skill, caution, and a luck so persistent it sometimes felt like a cosmic joke. The ration bars and filtration components arriving in automated supply drops every 60 days were her only confirmation that either the Zari remnant or Terran coalition even remembered this place existed. The drops themselves were probably automated processes that no one had bothered to shut down. Era wasn't complaining. As she worked on the transmitter, her scanner emitted a soft beep. Something moving in the crash graveyard to the east. Era froze, her 4-fingered hand hovering over her sidearm. The scanner recalibrated and confirmed. A singular life form, bipedal, advancing slowly toward her position. Era hadn't encountered another sentient being in over a year, not since that Harvester scout drone that had somehow survived the war's end. She dismantled it efficiently, but the incident had left her wary. Survivors in these parts were rare and often desperate. She raised her energy rifle, setting it to stun. Through the scope, she tracked a humanoid figure navigating the wreckage. The build suggested Terran rather than Zari, broader shoulders, less attenuated limbs. The figure wore damaged combat armor with faded insignia that, even at this distance, sent a jolt of recognition through Era's body. Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC. She'd served with that unit. The figure stumbled, using a piece of debris for support, then looked up directly toward Era's position. Slowly, the stranger removed their helmet. Era's breath caught in her throat. The face, weathered, scarred, but unmistakable, belonged to Commander Ryan Kastner, her former squad leader and friend. The same Ryan Kastner who'd sacrificed himself holding off a harvester platoon during the Battle of Pelikai Ridge, buying time for Era and the others to escape. The same Ryan Kastner whose memorial service she'd attended 2 years ago. Era stood, her rifle dropping to her side as shock overrode training. She pulled off her own helmet, letting the slightly toxic air sting her lungs as she shouted into the wasteland. Impossible. Didn't you die? The words echoed across the barren landscape, carrying farther than she'd intended in the thin atmosphere. The figure, Ryan, stopped, stared, then raised a hand in a tentative gesture of recognition. Ira's mind raced. Clones were theoretically possible, but had been banned since the Genomic Accords. Neural imprints existed, but couldn't account for a physical presence. Mistaken identity? No, she'd know Ryan's face anywhere. They'd fought together for years before the Alliance collapsed. Cautiously, Era descended from her outpost, rifle ready in her hands despite her shock. As she approached, Ryan's features became clearer. It was him, older, gaunt, with new scars cutting across his jawline, but undeniably him. His dark eyes held the same intensity she remembered, but now they carried something else: confusion. Era. His voice was hoarse, as if rarely used. Is that you? She stopped 5 meters away, her rifle not quite pointed at him, but not quite lowered either. You tell me who you think I am. And while you're at it, explain how you're walking around when I watched the ridge you were on get vaporized. Ryan swayed slightly, his expression cycling through too many emotions to track. I'm not sure. I remember Pelikai. I remember the harvesters advancing, telling you all to fall back. He pressed his hand against his temple. After that, fragments. Waking up in some kind of facility. Walking for days. Following, he gestured vaguely toward Ira's outpost. Some kind of signal. There's no signal, Era said, her suspicion growing. My transmitter's been down for a week. There was something. Still is. He extended his right arm, pushing up the sleeve of his battered armor. On his wrist, a strange marking glowed faintly. Geometric patterns reminiscent of Zari script, but unlike any dialect Era recognized. Against her better judgment, Era stepped closer. What is that? I don't know. It was there when I woke up. It gets brighter sometimes. Pulses. Let me hear. Ryan looked genuinely lost, his usual commanding presence diminished by evident confusion. Era, where are we? What happened to the others? The question was so earnest, so like the Ryan she'd known, that Ira's resolve wavered. Either this was an incredibly sophisticated trap, or something beyond her understanding was happening. We're on Gul Ra, she said finally. Abandoned outpost. The Alliance is gone. War's technically over, but nobody really won. She sighed, making a decision she hoped wouldn't get her killed. Come on. You look like you're about to collapse, and I've got questions that'll take more than 5 minutes to answer. Ryan nodded, relief visible in his exhausted features. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Era replied, gesturing toward her shelter with her rifle. I still might shoot you if your story doesn't add up. A faint smile crossed Ryan's face, a ghost of the expression she remembered from briefings and rare moments of downtime during the war. Fair enough. Era led the way back to her outpost, her mind working furiously. The war had produced many impossibilities, but returning from the dead wasn't one she'd encountered before. Behind her, Ryan's footsteps faltered occasionally. Whoever or whatever he was in rough shape. The outpost door hissed open, revealing the cramped interior that had been Ira's home for 18 months. Solar panels and fuel cells powered basic life support, a communications array, and minimal comforts. The walls were covered with maps, technical diagrams, and a few personal items, including a faded JSOC unit insignia that Ryan's eyes immediately fixed upon. Sit, Era commanded, pointing to a reinforced crate that served as a chair. She placed her rifle within easy reach, but didn't aim it at him. There's filtered water in that container. Ryan took the water gratefully, drinking with the measured care of someone who'd known resource scarcity. Era observed him clinically, looking for any sign that this wasn't who he appeared to be. His movements were familiar. The way he held the water container, the slight tilt of his head as he assessed the room. All distinctly Ryan. "Start talking," she said when he'd finished drinking. "Last I knew, you died holding off a harvester attack. Exploded into nothing but residual energy signatures, according to the scanners." Ryan set down the water container carefully. "I remember that moment. I had the charges set, saw the harvesters advancing, told you and the others to fall back." His brow furrowed. "I remember hitting the detonator. Then what?" Air pressed. "Darkness. Not like sleep. Like," he searched for words, "like being unmade. Then, fragments. A medical facility, I think. Voices speaking both Terran and Zari languages. Pain. Then waking up in a stasis pod a few weeks ago with this on my wrist." He gestured to the strange marking. "I've been following its pull ever since. Scavenging supplies, avoiding patrols." "Patrols? Whose?" "Everyone's. Terran. Zari. Automated harvester remnants. I didn't know who to trust." He met her eyes directly. "I still don't understand what happened to me, Era, but I know who I am. I am Ryan Kostnev. I served with you in JSOC Special Reconnaissance. You saved my life on Taraxis when that bridge collapsed. I returned the favor on Nexus 4 during the embassy evacuation." The details were correct, information that wasn't widely known. Era felt her certainty wavering. "How do I know you're not some kind of advanced replica? Neural imprints, genetic duplicates. The research divisions were working on all kinds of things before the Alliance fell." "You don't," Ryan said simply. "I don't even know for sure myself, but I remember everything. The mission briefings, the battles. That time you reprogrammed Commander Voss's personal drone to follow him around, playing Zari morning dirges because he denied your unit's request for upgraded comm equipment." Despite herself, Era's mouth twitched. That particular prank had nearly gotten her court-martialed. A small metallic object suddenly scuttled across the floor between them, interrupting the tension. It resembled a crab made of mismatched parts. A maintenance drone Era had salvaged and repurposed. Small optical sensors swiveled to take in Ryan, and the unit emitted a series of alarm beeps. "It's okay, Scrapper," Era said. "He's an old colleague." The drone, apparently unconvinced, extended a small welding arm in Ryan's direction with a threatening whir. "Your security system needs calibration," Ryan observed dryly. "He's protective." Era nudged the drone aside with her foot. "And more useful than most living assistants I've had." Scrapper retracted the welding arm, but continued to circle Ryan suspiciously, occasionally emitting disapproving electronic chirps. "So what now?" Ryan asked. "Are you going to shoot me? Or can I sit down properly?" Era considered him for a long moment, then nodded toward a more comfortable seat. "Seat. But understand that I'm still processing the fact that you're supposedly alive after I mourned you." Her voice held a bitter edge. "Do you have any idea what happened after Pelikai? How many more we lost when the Alliance completely fell apart?" Ryan moved cautiously to the offered seat. "Tell me." For the next hour, Era recounted the aftermath. How the joint forces had fractured along species lines, how former allies had turned weapons on each other, and how she'd eventually found herself stationed on this forgotten outpost until all official communications simply stopped. Throughout her account, Ryan listened intently, asking occasional questions that revealed both his horror at what had transpired and his intimate knowledge of the military structures involved. "And you've been alone here since then?" he finally asked. 18 months, for days, Era confirmed. "Automated supply drops keep coming. I maintain the sensors, monitor frequencies, repair what breaks. It's not glamorous, but beats the alternative." "Which is?" "Being dead," Era said flatly. "Like you were supposed to be." Ryan's expression tightened. "I wish I could explain it. All I know is that this," he indicated the marking on his wrist, "led me here. It's been getting stronger as I got closer to this position." Era was about to respond when a console on her workstation emitted a sharp alarm. She moved to it immediately, scanning the readout with practiced efficiency. "What is it?" Ryan asked, rising to his feet. "Unknown transmission." Era's fingers flew across the controls. "It's using old JSOC encryption patterns, but there's something else layered in. Zari cultural cipher, pre-war, classification. The screen flickered, then displayed a sequence of symbols that caused both of them to lean forward in surprise. The message repeated 3 times before Era could begin decoding it. "That's impossible," she whispered. "What does it say?" Ryan moved closer, studying the symbols. "It's addressing you. By rank." "But—" Era turned to face him, her expression troubled. "It's calling you commander." "That's wrong," Ryan said immediately. "I was a lieutenant when at Pelikai." "Exactly." Era's suspicion visibly intensified. "You were never promoted to commander. So either this message is for someone else, or something very strange is happening," Ryan finished. He looked down at his wrist, where the marking was now pulsing more strongly than before. This responded when the transmission came through. "I felt it." Era hesitated, then made a decision. She moved to a storage locker and retrieved a small scanner. Without explanation, she approached Ryan and ran the device over his body, paying particular attention to the marking on his wrist. "What is that?" he asked. "Multispectral analyzer. Picks up energy signatures, cellular degradation patterns, neural activity." She studied the readings with a frown. "Your cellular structure is unusual, stable, but with marker patterns I haven't seen before. And this marking isn't a tattoo or brand. It's somehow integrated with your dermal tissue at a molecular level." Ryan looked disturbed. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Era admitted. "But that signal came from somewhere, and it's connected to whatever happened to you." She returned to the console. The transmission included coordinates. "They're not far, about 40 kilometers east of here. In the Shattered Plains," Ryan said, recognition in his voice. "That was a Zari archaeological research site before the war. Era nodded slowly. The Thread Spire facility. You know it, by reputation only. It was restricted, classified research into ancient Zari artifacts. There were rumors." She hesitated. "Rumors about technologies that could store memories, preserve consciousness. You think that's connected to this?" Ryan gestured to himself. "I think it's our only lead." Era began gathering equipment, her movements decisive. "The signal specifically asked for you, or someone it thinks is you, by an incorrect rank. Your miraculous return from death, that integrated marking, and now this transmission? There's a connection. So we're going to the coordinates," Ryan stated rather than asked. "I'm going," Era corrected. "You're still an unknown variable. For all I know, this is an elaborate trap." Ryan stood straight, a flash of his former command presence returning. "If someone or something brought me back from the dead and marked me with this," he held up his wrist, "then I deserve to know why. And if it's a trap, you'll need backup." Era smiled thinly. "Bold of you to assume you'd be the backup rather than the bait." A series of agitated beeps interrupted them as Scrapper scuttled between them, its optical sensors swiveling rapidly between the two. The drone extended a small appendage toward Era's equipment pack, brandishing a crucial power cell. "Fine," Era sighed, taking the component. "Looks like Scrapper's coming too." "Your robot has separation anxiety," Ryan observed with a faint smile. "My robot has saved my life 4 times, Era countered, "which is currently 4 times more than you since your resurrection." The jab landed as intended, and a familiar, determined expression settled on Ryan's face. "Then let me start evening the score." Era studied him for a moment, weighing possibilities against risks. Finally, she nodded toward a storage compartment. "There's a backup sidearm in there. Biometric locks are disabled. Try not to shoot me with it." "No promises," Ryan replied, the ghost of his old humor surfacing again. "You always were irritating on extended missions." Despite herself, Era felt a strange comfort in the exchange. Whatever this Ryan was, clone, reconstruction, miraculous survivor, he sounded like the person she'd once trusted with her life. Whether that trust could be rebuilt remained to be seen. "We leave at first light," she said, turning away to hide the conflicting emotions on her face. "The radiation storms are stronger at night." Behind her, she heard Ryan examining the weapon, the familiar sounds of someone who'd handled firearms all their adult life. "Era," he said after a moment. "Thank you for not shooting me on sight. Don't make me regret it, she replied, not turning around. The day's still young. In the cramped space of the outpost, an uneasy alliance formed. A Zari soldier who'd survived by trust in nothing but herself, a human who'd returned from certified death, and a temperamental maintenance drone. None of them knew what awaited at the coordinates, but the mystery of Ryan's impossible return demanded investigation. As night fell over Gulra, Era kept one eye on her unexpected guest, and the other on the strange marking that pulsed on his wrist like a beacon calling them toward the shattered plains. Tomorrow would bring answers or death, possibly both. In this ruined corner of space, that was as much certainty as anyone could hope for. Dawn on Gulra wasn't the gradual lightening of sky that Era remembered from her homeworld. Instead, it came suddenly, as the planet's rapid rotation brought its sun above the horizon with minimal twilight. The ghostly radiation glow intensified into harsh daylight that penetrated the outpost's viewports. Era had slept little, dividing her night between monitoring Ryan, who'd slept fitfully on a makeshift pallet, and preparing for their journey. She'd recalibrated her equipment, loaded supplies into a compact pack, and run diagnostics on the skiff, a cobbled-together hover transport she'd assembled from 3 different wrecked vessels. It wasn't pretty, but it was faster and safer than walking through the plains. "Rise and shine, Commander," she said pointedly, nudging Ryan's boot with her foot. "We've got 40 kilometers of irradiated wasteland to cross." Ryan opened his eyes. Immediately, the instant alertness of a veteran soldier. For a moment, confusion clouded his expression, but quickly cleared as he took in his surroundings. "I'm not a commander," he said, sitting up. "Tell that to whoever sent the transmission." Era tossed him a packaged ration bar. "Eat. It tastes terrible, but contains everything necessary to keep a Terran functioning." Ryan examined the wrapper. Nutrient Composite Alpha 7. Military issue. "Haven't seen these since you died," Era supplied, raising an eyebrow. Supply drops still include them. Apparently, bureaucratic inventory systems outlast alliances, wars, and death itself. The marking on Ryan's wrist pulsed, as if in response to her words. He stared at it, then ripped open the ration bar and took a bite, grimacing at the flavor. Some things never change. These still taste like compressed industrial lubricant. Luxury is for planets with functioning ecosystems. Era strapped on her equipment harness and checker weapon. Scrapper circled her feet, beeping anxiously. "Relax," she told the drone. "We'll be back." Ryan watched the exchange with interest. "You've really anthropomorphized that maintenance unit," says the man who used to talk to his rifle during long deployments. Era secured the last of her gear. Besides, Scrapper's programming has evolved beyond basic functions. 18 months of isolation gave me plenty of time to tinker with his systems. Ryan noted the pronoun with amusement. Gender-neutral programming seemed wasteful on a repair drone. Era shrugged. He needed a personality to be useful for more complex tasks. And the name? He scraps things. Efficiently. She opened the outpost door. "Are you coming, or would you prefer to keep questioning my drone naming methodology?" Outside, the hover skiff waited, a sleek body from a Terran scout vessel mounted on the propulsion system of a Zari transport, with miscellaneous parts filling the gaps. Its surface was scarred by dust storms and hasty repairs. "You built this?" Ryan asked, genuine admiration in his voice. "I had time and motivation." Era began the startup sequence. Beats walking through radiation zones. Scrapper scuttled aboard, securing himself to a specially designed niche in the rear compartment. Era took the pilot's position, while Ryan settled into the passenger seat. "The guidance system is rudimentary," she explained as the engines hummed to life. "We'll follow the transmission coordinates, but watch for anomalies. The planes are unstable, tectonic shifts, radiation pockets, occasional temporal distortions near crash sites." Ryan nodded, his military training evident in his focus. "What's our approach strategy when we reach the target?" "Observe first. The coordinates align with a Zari research facility that was supposedly abandoned early in the war. If it's still operational in any capacity, we need to understand why before barging in. And if there's resistance? Era glanced at him. Then we deal with it, together or separately, depending on what your actual agenda turns out to be. Ryan accepted the implicit challenge with a nod. Fair enough. The skiff lifted off with a slight wobble before stabilizing. Era guided it east, accelerating as they cleared the immediate terrain around her outpost. The landscape blurred beneath them, cracked earth, twisted metal, the occasional glint of a long-dead vehicle or defensive position. They traveled in silence for several minutes, the whine of the engines filling the space between them. Finally, Ryan spoke. What happened to the others? From our unit, Era kept her eyes on the terrain ahead. Captain Lennis died in the orbital defense collapse. Specialists Torres and Vix made it to the extraction, but their transport was hit by friendly fire after the alliance fractured. Her voice remained steady, reciting facts without emotion. Communications officer Edin survived longer than most. Last I heard, she was coordinating resistance on Proxima Station. And Specialist Herrick? Era's hands tightened on the controls. Don't. Ryan fell silent, understanding he'd touched a nerve. Eventually, he tried another approach. The Thread Spire facility. What do you know about it? Grateful for the change of subject, Era relaxed slightly. It was established decades before first contact with Terrence. Officially, it researched ancient Zari artifacts discovered in this region. Unofficially, there were rumors about consciousness transfer experiments, memory storage technologies. Memory storage? Ryan's interest sharpened. The artifacts supposedly contained patterns that could record neural pathways. The research team was attempting to reverse engineer the technology. Era navigated around a particularly large wreckage field. After Terranzari contact, there was a collaborative research phase, but access remained restricted. When the alliance formed against the Harvesters, the facility was supposedly repurposed for military applications, then abandoned when the front lines shifted. You seem well informed for someone who claims to know only by reputation. Era's mouth twisted into a half smile. Intelligence gathering was part of my specialization, remember? I made it my business to know things beyond my clearance level. Ryan rubbed his wrist with a marking continued to pulse. You think they succeeded? With the memory technology? I think something kept you from staying dead, Era replied bluntly. Whether that's related to Thread Spire research is what we're going to find out. The skiff crested a ridge, revealing the full expanse of the shattered plains. A vast depression in the planet's surface where some ancient cataclysm had fractured the bedrock into jagged formations. Scattered throughout were the husks of war machines, crashed vessels, and the occasional glint of structure that might have been part of the original research installation. Era slowed their approach, activating additional sensors. We're picking up energy readings, faint but present. Something down there still has power. Ryan leaned forward, studying the terrain. There, he pointed to a formation that stood out from the natural rock. That structure has deliberate geometry. Zari design principles. Good eye, Era acknowledged, adjusting their course. We'll set down half a kilometer away and approach on foot. Less chance of detection. As they drew closer, the marking on Ryan's wrist glowed more intensely. He grimaced, rubbing it. It's responding to proximity. Almost. Burning. Era cast him a concerned glance. Can you continue? Yes, he said firmly. Whatever this is, I need answers. They landed the skiff in the shadow of a fallen harvester transport, a massive hexagonal hull that provided excellent cover. Era powered down the engines, but left the systems on standby for quick departure if necessary. Stay with the skiff, she instructed Scrapper, who beeped in protest. That's an order. If we're not back in 6 hours, return to the outpost and activate Protocol 17. The drone's optical sensors dimmed in what appeared to be resignation. What's Protocol 17? Ryan asked as they disembarked. Self-destruct sequence for the outpost. Era replied matter-of-factly. I prefer not to leave my research and equipment for scavengers if I don't return. Cheerful planning, Ryan commented, checking his sidearm. Practical, Era corrected. This way, they advanced cautiously through the broken landscape, using the scattered debris for cover. Era moved with the fluid grace characteristic of her species, while Ryan demonstrated the disciplined motions of someone with extensive combat training. Despite their mutual wariness, they fell naturally into complementary positioning, covering angles for each other, maintaining optimal spacing for mutual defense. As they closed in on the structure, details became clearer. What they'd first identified as a simple building was revealed to be an entrance, a massive doorway embedded in the rock face, adorned with symbols that predated modern Zari script. "This is ancient," Era breathed, approaching the inscriptions. Pre-unification era, before Zari became a unified species. "Can you read it?" Ryan asked, keeping watch on their surroundings. "Partially. It references threads of existence and anchors across the void." Era traced the symbols with her fingers. Poetic language was common in early Zari scientific documentation. Ryan suddenly gasped, doubling over. The marking on his wrist now blazed with light that shone through the fabric of his sleeve. "Ryan," Era moved to his side, weapon still ready. "It's connecting with something," he managed through clenched teeth. He extended his arm toward the doorway, and to their mutual shock, a corresponding pattern on the ancient door illuminated in response. A low rumble vibrated through the ground as mechanisms that had lain dormant for years began to activate. The massive door shuddered, then slowly parted down the middle, revealing a darkened passage that sloped downward into the planet. "That's not supposed to happen," Era said, instinctively stepping back. "These ruins shouldn't be operational." The pain in Ryan's wrist subsided as suddenly as it had begun, though the marking continued to glow. He straightened, looking just as confused as Era. "I guess we're expected," he said grimly. Era's tactical mind raced through options. This is obviously a trap, but the question is, for whom? And set by what? Only one way to find out. Ryan stepped toward the open doorway. Era caught his arm. "Wait, before we go in there, I need to know something." She looked directly into his eyes. "Do you have any memory, any at all, of what happened after the explosion at Pelikai? Even the slightest fragment that might explain this connection?" Ryan hesitated, then nodded. Slowly. "There's one thing. Not a full memory, more like an impression. In the darkness after the explosion, I remember feeling like I was being pulled apart, examined, then reassembled. And a voice, neither Terran nor Zari, saying something about the other anchor." "The other anchor," Era repeated, a chill running through her. She unconsciously touched her upper arm, where her sleeve covered a birthmark she'd had since childhood. "What is it?" Ryan asked, noticing her reaction. Era shook her head. "Nothing. Probably nothing." She readied her weapon. "Let's proceed. Stay alert." Together, they entered the doorway, lights from their equipment illuminating a passage that bore the unmistakable aesthetic of ancient Zari architecture. Flowing curves blended with precise geometric patterns. The air inside was surprisingly fresh, suggesting some environmental systems remained functional. They descended for several minutes, the passage gradually widening into a proper corridor. Signs of more recent modifications became apparent. Modern lighting fixtures currently inactive, research equipment pushed against walls, and eventually, a security station that combined Terran and Zari technologies. "Joint operation," Era noted, examining the abandoned workstation. "This confirms ThreadSpire became a collaborative project during the Alliance." "Look at this," Ryan called from further along the corridor. He stood before a large schematic displayed on a wall. "Project Echo Thread. Classification Level Omega." Era joined him, studying the diagram. It depicted what appeared to be neural mapping procedures, quantum storage mechanisms, and a process labeled Reconstitution Protocol. "They were transferring consciousness," she whispered. "Or trying to. Between species," Ryan added, pointing to notation that clearly indicated Terran and Zari neural structures, "creating backups of crucial personnel in case of casualties." The implications hung heavily between them. Era turned to look at Ryan, really look at him, seeing both her former comrade and something else, something manufactured yet authentic. "You think I'm one of these backups?" Ryan stated rather than asked. "A reconstruction based on stored memories. It would explain how you survived an explosion that should have vaporized you," Era replied carefully. "But not why you reappeared 2 years later or why you were drawn here." Before Ryan could respond, lights suddenly flickered to life throughout the corridor. A gentle hum of power rose around them as dormant systems reactivated. At the same moment, the marking on Ryan's wrist pulsed in sync with the facility's awakening. "We triggered something," Era said, raising her weapon defensively. "Not just something," came a synthesized voice from speakers they couldn't locate. "You have activated primary restoration protocol. Dual anchors confirmed. Welcome, Commander Ryan Kastner and Preserver Eravol." They exchanged startled glances at the use of their names, and the titles neither recognized. "Identify yourself," Era demanded. "This is Thread Spire Central Intelligence," the voice replied. "Caretaker of the Echo Thread Initiative. Please proceed to the central chamber for synchronization." "Synchronization?" Ryan questioned, but the voice did not respond further. The lighting in the corridor shifted, creating a pathway of illumination leading deeper into the facility. Era and Ryan stood their ground, reluctant to follow the obvious directive. "We could leave," Era suggested, though her tone lacked conviction. "Return to the outpost, research what we've learned so far." Ryan looked down at the marking on his wrist, still pulsating in rhythm with the facility systems. "Whatever this is, it's part of me now. I need to know. And if it overwrites what's left of you, replaces your consciousness with something else, then I'll need someone I trust to put me down," he said simply. "Someone who's already mourned me once and can do it again if necessary." The blunt statement hit Era harder than she expected. Despite her suspicions, despite the strangeness of his return, this was still Ryan, the human who'd fought beside.